Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. If he knew the owner, why didn't he call them or come in with them? That's my favorite part of our first story, and we'll tell you more right after a short pause. So before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. You know the owner? Well, that changes everything. Long time ago, I worked in a medium-sized video store chain for about a decade. I worked as everything from clerk to manager and district manager in that time. I've always hated customers. Hiding that fact was always a challenge. One day we had a customer that was upset that we'd charged his credit card over $100. We did this because he had rented 3 Sony PlayStation games for his kid. Our games had those CD shield protective stickers that were stuck to the back and impossible to take off without destroying the game. His kid had tried to peel them off and killed 3 fairly new games. The mom came in and claimed that they didn't work and wanted to exchange them. The clerk told her what her son had done to the games and that she was now responsible for the replacement of the games her son ruined. When my employee told her how much it had cost to replace them, she said, "Good luck with that," and walked out. When I came in later that day, my employee showed me the games and told me what happened. I called their house and got the father. I explained what had happened and that I could probably cut him a little bit of slack on the replacement cost. His response? "F you, I'm not paying anything." He hung up and I charged his credit card, the one that he must have forgot we kept on file. A few weeks later, he got the credit card bill in the mail and came down to the store to yell at me. I tried to explain that he was responsible. I tried to tell him that if he could go find replacements at a used game store cheaper, I would refund the full price which we'd charged him. He started off with the "I'll sue you" and then went to the "I'll report you to the Better Business Bureau" to "I'll report you to the state's attorney general." When he realized that I wasn't intimidated by his threats, he very smugly said this to me. "Douche nozzle customer, I know the owner, and you're effed for how you treated me. When I tell him you'll be fired so quick it'll make your head spin." A-hole me, "You know David?" DNC, "Yeah, I know David, and you're so effed." AHM, "The owner's name's Peter." DNC, "That's what I meant." AHM, "Actually, his name's Jack." DNC, "F you." He crumpled up his credit card bill, tossed it at me, and stormed out. And our second story, A Tale of Two Tomatoes. So, I'm a horticulturist, heirloom tomato champion, and plant breeder today, right? I got hooked on gardening in school after the teacher taught us about Mendel's pea experiment. Mom fancied herself a gardener, but let little me have a small plot after I annoyed her senseless for some dirt. Turns out I'm innately skilled and have a green thumb. Within a year or two, I was producing better tomatoes and flowers than she did. I went to go harvest some beefsteak slicers I'd been watching ripen for days, and they were completely gone. Mom had picked them, and that night I found she'd served them as a caprese at dinner when family friends had come over. She took credit for them. My flawless big red slicers, she said she grew them. We had a huge fight later. I threatened to stop growing them if she stole my crops again. I was informed I would keep growing tomatoes. It was the least I could do to contribute to the family, etc. Why would I not want to share? Next year at the nursery getting starts, I noticed a tray of Cherokee Purple at the very beginning of the heirloom movement when it was so hard to find any, save mail order. I'd read about them and was so excited to try this new thing, but I swallowed it and just popped them on the cart. Mom assumed I'd bought beefsteaks like normal. Growing season passes. My tomatoes are ripening, but they're strange-shaped, lumpy, cat-faced, cracked, and a weird muddy purple. I pick my first fruits and take them in and asked Mom to prepare them with dinner. I was sharing as asked. She flipped, insisted they were diseased, mutated. How had I messed up my crop so bad? By then I'd sliced one. My dad and brother wandered in to see what the commotion was. I quickly explained these were exactly what my rare heirloom Cherokee Purples were supposed to look like and how important they were as a vanishing heirloom. And also, oh, they taste amazing. Dad, my brother, and I polished the fruits off, and they asked me to grow more next year. These were the best tomatoes they'd ever had, and so different. Mom refused to try them because they were just too ugly to eat, and my vines were never raided again. The ugly fruits are often the tastiest ones. And our next story, Wrapping traditions. Once upon a time, I was a newlywed getting ready for my first Christmas with my in-laws. Now, it's worth noting that these people are Christmas crazy. You know that one house on the block that's decked out in more bling than a cashed-up stripper? That's them. So as a new bride, I wanted to make a good impression. I should also note that my new husband had a history of taking credit for things he'd played no part in, such as presents or meals or a wedding. In the lead up to Christmas, I'd shopped, wrapped, and ribboned as if my life depended on it. Everyone had carefully selected gifts that were wrapped immaculately with a complimenting ribbon and bow and handmade tags. Not the stickers with to and from. Christmas morning, I was ready. We entered the living room, and after the momentary visual adjustment required for that amount of tinsel in a confined space, everyone sat down around the tree for the gift-giving ceremony. The ceremony was a big part of the day for my in-laws. One person was selected to wear a Santa hat and distribute the gifts one by one. When it was your turn to open a gift, everybody watched you. What I didn't know then is this was a form of analysis, so it could be discussed later. A few gifts are given out. Then one of the ones I'd wrapped was handed to my husband. I was terribly excited. It was something he'd wanted for ages. I couldn't wait for him to be thrilled when he opened it, but wait, I did, because he couldn't get the ribbon off. We weren't supposed to talk during the ceremony, so we all sat there quietly while a grown man wrestled with a ribbon. It was curling ribbon for those in the know, not exactly a Rubik's Cube. After a good 10 minutes of watching him lose his mind, I quietly suggested he pull the bow off the ribbon so it would slip off the side. He did so and was mildly enthused by the gift. We moved on to the next person, and after a bit, my husband was handed another gift. My mother-in-law said, "Don't worry, I won't tell you how to open it," with a completely innocent smile on her face. I chose not to say what I was thinking. Shortly after, a gift was handed to me from my parents-in-law with an insincere apology that it didn't have a bow. At this point, I figured I must have somehow broken ceremony etiquette by using ribbon. I made a mental note not to repeat my mistake in the future and laughed it off. First Christmas, right? There's bound to be some hiccups. Following the ceremony, it was lunchtime, which went fine. Afterwards, the men retired downstairs while the women cleaned up. This wasn't unusual as they're a fairly traditional family, except instead of helping my mother and sister-in-law with the dishes, I was sent to collect the scraps of wrapping paper from earlier and take them out to the rubbish. This was a little unusual. When I'd been there for meals before, I'd done dishes with them. But again, it's Christmas, and they have their rules, so I collected it all up and then went back to the kitchen to get another rubbish bag. I was in the hallway and I overheard their conversation about how utterly terrible I was at domestic things, how I'd clearly paid to have the gifts wrapped to show off, how the things I'd picked were unsuitable, and how I was so ungrateful for what they'd given me, etc., etc. I was steamed. Unexpectedly, my husband chimed in. If I'd known she was going to go stupid with it, I would have helped, but I was so busy working and she swore she'd take care of it. I went from steamed to apocalyptic. He was in his third week of an 8-week holiday from work while I was working extra shifts trying to get a promotion. I'd begged him to help me choose things for his family. When we got home later and I'd calmed down a bit, I tried talking to him about it. His response was a groveling apology and an explanation that his family were a bit crazy about Christmas and that I should just leave family gifts to him. So the following Christmas, I bought a gift for each of them. One gift. From me only, wrapped with simple paper and minimal tape. Christmas morning comes around and my husband's given the honor of the Santa hat. Halfway through, he starts looking around the tree frantically, obviously having realized that there was nothing from him under there. Afterwards, he pulls me aside and asks, "What the F?" I'm sure I looked way more innocent than I felt when I answered, "I left the family gifts to you." I don't have a funny story about the third Christmas, because our marriage didn't last that long. That family sounds extra special. And our last story. Clearly disabled person falls over. Better call the cops on him. A bit of context. Due to a brain injury a few years back, my father's motor skills haven't been the greatest. He can't operate machinery and his memory is awful. He can usually walk around fine, if wobbly on most days, but when he's having a bad day, he needs the help of a cane or a walker. Even then, he can be pretty prone to falling over. No biggie, no ambulance needed as long as he doesn't hit his head and he can easily get back up with help. So he's with me as we're on a grocery run since he insists on paying. I'm carting our stuff back to the car and he's hobbling alongside me with his cane, as it's a bit of an off day for him. I begin loading our stuff into the car when Dad takes a bit of a tumble. As I go over to help my dad stand, I nearly jump out of my skin as this nearby woman with kids sees us and practically screams. I kinda shoot her a WTF lady look while I'm helping him up, but this woman's just scowling at me and whispering into her phone. I help my dad into the car so he can sit and catch his breath. While I finish putting up my groceries, I heard someone call out to me. I turned to see a police officer. Reddit, do you want to know what this Karen's reaction was to seeing a 50-something-year-old man with a cane falling over was? Apparently, other than screaming, it was to call the cops and report him for public drunkenness. I didn't even know that was a thing until it was explained to me, but apparently in my state it's a Class C misdemeanor and you can get fined up to $500. A few questions and a breathalyzer test cleared my dad's name and we got to go home without incident. And I never did find out what happened to that nutcase of a woman. But what kind of backwards worldview do you need to have in order to look at an elderly person who's fallen over, see that they have a cane and think, ooh, a drunkard and hazard to polite society? I'm willing to bet Karen's been charged with the same thing she tried to report your dad for. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.